Cool. Welcome everybody. Thank you for joining us today from wherever you are in the world. And it seems like there's lots of representation from all over the world, which is great to see. Welcome to Festival Ideas Conversation, Algorithm Revealed, which is part of the Corridor of Light event. Corridor of Light is an event happening currently in Manchester until the end of the weekend. There will be lots of projections happening all over the Oxford Road and other events. Um, Myself, and I'm Antonio Roberts, one of the artists taking part in it. And you'll be able to see like a projection of mine along the Oxford Road, as well as there'll be an event, an Algorave event featuring myself and another one of the participants in this conversation. So you'll be able to see all of that. And just to let everyone know as well, some important information. This event is being live captioned automatically by Zoom. To activate the closed captions or to access the full transcript of the session, please press the CC button on the menu on the bottom of your screen. If you're having any difficulties accessing this function, please do let us know in the chat. There'll be someone there to help you out. Please feel free to use the chat function to say hello and to let us know where you are in the world. And of course, there will be time for questions. So hold them back or put them in the chat and we'll get to them. So there's a Q&A function which you're able to use. So please just use that as well. All right, so let's just get ourselves this discussion kind of started. So this discussion today, we're going to be talking a little bit about Algorave and how the global movement has spread from a city in the UK over to, well, basically it's global now. Introducing myself again, my name is Antonio Roberts, and I guess I'm part of the Algorave movement. I'll be one of the people in the discussion today, and then we're going to have three other panelists. I'll say their names, but I'm also going to let them introduce themselves. So we're going to have Abhinay Koprazi, Melody Lovelace, and also Alex McLean. So could I invite those people onto the stage, please? Turn on your cameras. Am I talking into the void? Hey, there you guys are. Hello. Just giving you a little wave. These are all of our panelists. So, again, I'm Antonio, based in Birmingham in the UK. I'm going to pick on someone to introduce themselves first, I guess. Who shall I pick on first? Maybe I'll go for Melody, if that could be good.
Okay. Hello. I'm Melody. I am based in New York City, Brooklyn. I've been I don't know time anymore because of lockdown, but I think I've been live coding for 4 or 5 years, give or take. And I mostly live code music. I started off in Cody, which is a live coding trio that I'm part of with Kate Sicchio and Sarah Groff Henny Palermo. I also live code with the percussionist Caitlin Colley, and so I'll live sample her and loop it, and then we do improvising stuff together, and she also does poetry, so that's fun. And I also live code as my solo stuff, so I sing, and then I record myself and I play it back. And so that's a little bit of who I am. So hi.
Awesome. Thank you. Abhinay?
Hi, I'm Abhinay Koparji. I'm from Allahabad, which is north of India, but I'm currently in Bombay. And that's where we kind of started our Algorave journey, at least the Algorave India journey. I've been live coding in various ways for about 10 years or so, but since the Algorave India stuff started, that's only been like 3 years now. So I play with some network music bands as well. There's one called Supercontinent that started with folks from McMaster University and Hamilton, and then that's people from Japan, South Africa. At one point in time, we had someone from Australia, and we used to sort of play live. We practice every week, and then now we kind of do shows with those things. I've been doing that for about a couple of years now. Other than that, there's another network music group called Ignoto, which has folks from Argentina. Iris, hi, if you're watching this. And Ranga from the rest of the Southeast Asia. I'm going to shut up because as you were discussing that we're going to keep talking about these things further. Yeah, that's me.
Cool. Thank you very much. And last but not least, Alex, do you want to tell us who you are?
Yeah, I'm Alex. I'm here in Sheffield, UK. I've been live coding. Well, I've been making algorithmic music and performing with it since the year 2000. You can do the maths. But I've probably been live coding since around the year 2003. So quite a long time. And in that time, I've collaborated a lot with lots of different people, percussionists, other live coders, and I have organized a lot of things like lots of Algoraves, a festival called AlgoMech, which kind of brings together algorithmic music with mechanical music, sort of staging all kinds of systems, whether they're mechanical or algorithmic, here in Sheffield. And I've also got quite interested lately in collaborating on a project around weaving. So thinking about the connection between algorithmic music and an ancient art like weaving. I think Melody's been doing similar things, maybe, I'm not sure. It's interesting how these things cross over, but that's kind of me.
Awesome. Thank you for that. So the structure today, we're just going to have a discussion for about 30 minutes and then invite questions from everyone else. So yeah, where do we begin? Because of course, Algorave is a huge topic. Live coding is a huge topic. Like, shall we start at the beginning? How do you want to do this? Well, okay. Like, I guess Alex, it started in Sheffield. Would you say, right? Or am I completely incorrect about that?
I don't know. I mean, the start of my live coding career was definitely in London. I was living there as a student. Well, before that, I wasn't a student. I was just a person making algorithmic music. But when I got interested in live coding, that sort of brought me into the world of going back to university and stuff. But it's by the by. So yeah, the first Algorave was in London, actually, although I lived in Sheffield then, but came down for it. So I guess somewhere between London and Sheffield. I mean, the first time I kind of used the word Algorave was on the way to a gig in Nottingham. My friend Nick Collins, we were listening to some happy hardcore on a pirate radio station and just thought that we'd collaborate and make some dance music at an event. In the end, it was a really small event, really cold, no one danced. But and that's kind of the thing, is that at the start, I kind of made this word Algorave, put together algorithm and rave as an attempt to get people dancing to this stuff and to get people making dance music with algorithms, because a lot of algorithmic music happens in academia where people generally don't dance to the music. They're pretty sedentary in that respect. And I wanted to kind of create a space where people could experiment with movement and algorithms. And so tried various things. We made a record label called Chord Punch, me and Nick Collins, to try and get this being more of a music rather than a research interest. But in the end, it seemed coming up with a really dorky word, Algorave, was what got people's interest. And once you've got a name for something, people can sort of gather around it and turn it into a real thing. But to me, it doesn't really feel real. I just think it's kind of this made up idea that, and the first Algoraves, people didn't dance so much. And it's only sort of in recent years that it's really taken off as something which happens in a club or in a warehouse somewhere, and that people actually do dance to in large numbers and sort of breathe meaning into the whole experience. So for me, when people say, what is Algorave, I'm not really sure. So I think it's probably best for other people to explain, because I don't know anymore.
Who wants to try and describe what Algorave is then? Because, like, again, Alex, you guess Kit started it, but like, what's it to everyone else? I could say something, but someone else can say something. Cool.
Or maybe live coding, we could sort of generalize it a bit and talk about live coding, which is what we do there. But everyone kind of has their own definition of live coding. So it'd be nice to hear what the other ones are.
Yeah, jump in.
Oh.
Yeah, go for it.
So we both unmuted at the same time. Okay. So yeah, I think this idea, you know, how do we talk about live coding is interesting. So something is that I do is I'm so lucky that I get to teach live coding in colleges. So right now I'm teaching live coding at NYU for the second time, and this time it's in person, which is so great, much better. But you know, the first day of class, something that we do is just like we try like what is live coding, and basically, I just show a bunch of slides of other people trying to discuss live coding as a way to kind of bring up this idea that we don't, you know, it's like there's no official handbook for like live coding or Algorave, and there's no like dictionary definition, which I find really interesting. And I like to bring up, especially for students, just to like think about, you know, the labels we give to everything, or like how do we even categorize or define a thing. But it's also sometimes confusing. Like I definitely get like responses like, so what is it? But like then I'll point to a slide, and I have like I don't know if it's like an official definition, but I'll like just like live coding is the act of manipulating algorithms in real time in order to change an ongoing artistic process like music or visuals. And that's usually the go-to thing that I tell them. But I also really like the philosophical idea that, like, you know, who knows?
Yeah, I mean, the way I've used it is sort of a way of just talking to people in a more nerdy way. It's interesting, right? That we are speaking to people without speaking to people. We are writing words on a screen that could be both interpreted by computers as well as like in our comments, writing little messages to the people watching it. Especially now in the past year, because everyone's doing live streams, and maybe your mics are off, but you can still do stuff, whether it's sounds or music-like sounds or just fart noises in various different ways. So the way I've used live coding lately is been just getting folks interested in algorithmic arts, because there seems to have been, at least in India, the concept was that, okay, if you know programming, you would be making some huge software and you're a software developer making big bucks, and maybe doing something boring in an office. Whereas the way I've engaged with it has been completely different. It just expanding my practice, maybe sometimes doing repetitive tasks more easily or more quickly or whatever. But then the idea of it is it lets you break out into completely improvisational methods and like just let the computer do some of those out of the box, if you want to call it, things. I was just discussing it with someone that sometimes as technical people, we get like really fixated on getting even numbers. Like if you're making a design, you would start aligning things to grid or whatever, because you want it to fit in visual structures easily. But then with live coding, we're always trying to make things more humanized, even with electronic music, right? And it lets us do these in like fairly controlled ways, but we can make it go wild as well. So yeah, for me, live coding is just another way of talking and communicating with folks.
I like that, really, actually, especially like the whole kind of grid stuff as well. For me, like live coding so my background isn't really like computing in necessarily, and I was drawn to live coding just because of like the instantaneous feedback of it all. You know, like I would try writing code and then compile it and then just hope that it works, and then often it wouldn't. So I like the sort of instantaneous feedback thing of live coding. And I remember I did another talk at some point in the last however many years, and like the whole act of live coding is like it's very intentional typing. Like you're not just typing just to get words on the page. It's like I'm going to type this bit at this precise time to get that audience feedback. Which I like that intentional typing. But and like what you were saying, Alex, with the like even what is it? I guess for me, live coding, where I guess it affects my life most is the performance element, the algorithm, basically the parties and the people. That's where because of course you can have live coding, but for me, for it to be a thing in my life, in my work, that's where doing all of these events makes it a real thing for me. And and having other people in the same room and letting that happen. So yeah, that for me, the algorithm side is for me is like what live coding is.
Yeah, I guess it's nice to define live coding in terms of a situation. You can say there's this person on stage, usually behind them, you can usually project it as their code, and they're typing. There's music coming out or visuals on the screen that they're making by coding, and there's people watching who might be dancing. That's one way. It's just like a configuration of people and technology, I suppose. Mm-hmm. And yeah, I like the idea that it's open, that it's kind of continually changing itself, like Melody says, and that it's something that you use to communicate or express yourself, as Kapazi says. I think for me, I've been talking about this with my friend Julian Roruba, and he likes to think of live coding as something where programming is part of the program. So usually you write your programming, you might write some code, you make an application, and then it runs separately from you. But with live coding, the actual programming is part of the program. Like you don't separate the two. The program's running, but it can change at any moment because you're programming it. And also as a human, you're changed by the code that's running because it's making music or visuals. And in the case of music, it's actually touching you with these sound waves, and you're responding to that. And it's like this feedback process of creativity, which kind of comes away from the idea of it as communication, or at least makes it a two-way communication where it's not just like expressing yourself, beaming out your genius as this music, but it's much more kind of a negotiation where you're kind of listening and seeing what comes out of this computer and then making adjustments, and then seeing what that does is this kind of exploratory process. Yeah, that's kind of my thinking about live coding. And Algorave is just where it becomes even more embodied, I suppose, because you really feel it, and you move with it, and it becomes a whole thing. It's just such a nice experience to be so absorbed in this world of language as a coder, but also feel this physical response from the people in front of you, some of whom will be your friends probably. And yeah, it's nice. But yeah, how does it feel? I suppose that's another question, isn't it? Not what does it mean, but how does live coding feel to you?
I think something that when I first saw live coding for the first time, something that really stuck out to me was like, at first the idea, I didn't like it, honestly. I come from classical music, and so, there's like a stigma against, certain types of computer music, right? And so I was like a little judgmental going in. But then I saw it, and then I was like, oh, it's process music. That's all. I'm like, and then it just made sense because I loved process music already. And so like part of the idea is a process music's the idea that you're able to follow along with the process as part of like the whole the whole thing, right? Like you're communicating a process and it's supposed to be, some ideas are like supposed to be less fluffy in certain ways. Like if you think about emotional music, right? And how that's like manipulative, like there's like this idea that, process music is more pure in a way, right? And then I thought that was really, then I became interested once I just realized it was about following along a story, which I think ties along to what we've all kind of touched on about communication and using code as a way to communicate an idea that might not be understood or easily understood or said through written or spoken language, right? It's like explaining it through a different sense. It's using communication text, right, to explore or either something visual or sound, which is, or some, other stuff, of course, but I think that's really interesting.
Yeah, again, completely. I like what you're saying there. For me, like the feeling of it, I was trying to think of it like, is it stressful or is it high energy, like live coding? I don't. Probably both. Maybe like all of the stress of doing it gives me all of this energy because, I like that I'm making a lot of decisions in front of people. Like, this is because I like high pressure situations in some way. Like I run events, an artist, whatever else. And I like that as part of the performance, I'm having to make all of these decisions. And sometimes it's not even like decisions as to like what code to run. Sometimes it's a decision of, if I run this code, will my computer crash? And do I want to do that? Like, do I want to risk that? How lucky am I feeling today? So I like that, that. So when I'm performing, I feel alive, basically. I feel sweaty and shaky and just like, but that's what excites me. And I don't come from a music background, unlike you, Melody, and maybe Abinay as well, and maybe Alex. Like I don't come from a music background. I listen to it, so I do have some sort of knowledge of like classical music, and having been worked with lots of different artists who do certain types of music and whatever. I'm aware of maybe stigma around electronic music, but for me it really was just like one way of doing things. Like it's another method of doing it. And but yeah, this one feels a lot more high energy to me, for just because there's so much that can go wrong. I guess there's so much unknown, and go wrong it does, and it does often. You're nodding there, Abinay. Have you had lots of errors happen to you?
Oh yes, I embrace it, and that's so. We used to do these experimental music gigs in Bombay since and it used to be mostly just folks standing around and wondering what are these bizarre sounds that are coming out from these speakers. But because we were not showing what we were doing, it was just one way. And then if they would latch onto those sounds, it was great. But otherwise, it was harder sounds, breakcore, drum and bass sort of things. But when I happened to be around in the UK during the early days, and I saw you guys playing around with these things and like showing people what is happening in the screen. I was like, okay, great. The sounds are similar and the idea is similar. We just have to make sure that the people know what the hell we're doing. It's not just checking email, which most people think that electronic musicians are doing when they're playing off a computer. So the way I've embraced it is, as I described earlier, like it has this rush, but if it breaks, then it becomes this weird improvisational theater thing where you're trying to work through the problem or whatever it is, maybe talk to people, maybe get ideas from them. So it's like a weird stand-up comedy routine that you're doing with code and computers and whatever else tech that you might have around. So I was not as confident in my other music life. So this sort of developed it in quite a fun way.
And actually, what about the music genres as well? Because you mentioned breakcore, and I know everyone's work, and but just to say as well, for those who will be at Corridor of Light in Manchester, we have a lot of videos by all of you, everyone here, playing like pre-recorded music. But like, what about the genres that you're playing? What's everyone making? Like, is it? I guess because maybe the assumption is that it's electronic music, but is that what we're all doing? What are you doing, Alex? Put you on the spot.
Yeah, I guess it's all. I mean, by definition, what I'm doing is electronic music, but I do collaborate with percussionists quite a lot whenever I can to do more free improvised stuff. I found that super inspiring. Last weekend I collaborated with my friend Leafcutter John, who made this kind of abstract soundscape with this handmade instrument while I was doing something pretty much like sort of really dubby bass music, I guess, towards the end. I also have a techno collaboration, which is what I'm going to do on Saturday in the Corridor of Light with my friend Sam, CCAI, where he plays a drum machine and I do weird live coding stuff on top. So all kinds of things. And live coding is just really nice for collaborating. I think I just love collaborating because the ideas just come forward just through conversation with people. But I'm super curious about what it's like to collaborate across networks. And you mentioned your collaboration, Abhinay, Supercontinent, and Melody. I guess your friend Kate is now in a different city. Are you still collaborating with her as part of your band? It'd be nice to hear about how you managed to collaborate across long distance.
Yeah. So for Cody, both Kate and Sarah haven't been in New York City for a few years, and now so we've been using Troop, and luckily that's like one of the few things already out there that you could do Sonic Pi collaborative live coding. Most of it's for everything else but Sonic Pi. And so, yeah, we've been using Troop. And so Sarah set up like a safe VPN. And then it's kind of, sometimes we joke that it's our church. So we'll meet together like Kate and my Sunday morning, and it'll be like, Kate or late afternoon in Berlin with Sarah. And so we actually did that this past weekend. And sometimes we're very busy and we don't, but like it's especially during lockdown, that was like the most collaboration that I was like doing. And so I do like, that sentiment you said about Alex about live coding and collaborative. It's so great. I'm like, yeah, like we literally were able to like do something that we couldn't have done. Like we weren't seeing anyone, we're all in the same boat. It was really great. It was nice. When with Caitlin, we just started up seeing each other in person again. And so that's really exciting. She's a percussionist again, and we're trying to do more, how do I say? I don't know. We're trying to do more with synchronization, which is actually very, very hard, which can be very, very hard to communicate with like a live person versus a machine. And that's been like a really fun thing to problem solve through and build a system out. So it's all very exciting.
Yeah, for me, it's been quite a bunch of different sounds. So with Algorithm India, he makes monitors and stuff himself. So when I'm playing stuff with him, I kind of take percussion duties. I actually come from a percussion background myself, and so I kind of try to navigate around some weird sounds that he's making. So we kind of take turns, whether it could be take turns who's going to be more weirder and who's going to kind of keep it straight up sort of in a jazz context, keep the beat going, sort of a thing. But with like Supercontinent, it's all over the place. Uh, we do have these strategies that we have built around for rehearsing. So like there's one strategy called Annihilate, where we're basically making annihilation sounds. There's one called Virus, where we're just taking ideas from each other, like code from each other, and like trying to mutate it in various different ways and move it around. There's ambient. So I mean, there's no. It is electronic music, but for example, the piece I've sent over for the Corridor of Light, in there I'm taking vocal chops from this one artist who's done like a very nice piece on Bhairavi and Rag Bhairavi, and then I'm doing some electronic things, more like microsound type things with it. So that's kind of what I like about it, that you can integrate different systems and see what comes out from that. Yeah, so it's kind of limitless, I would say. It's not just electronic.
I like that idea of annihilation. Like, no, we're not changing people's code. We're annihilating it. It sounds very, yeah, like it's like a war going on. Alex actually just asked me if I could talk about my collaboration with Maria, because I guess, like, yeah, I know, Melody, you were talking about how, like, you're collaborating with your collaborators, and you're in. I think you said Kate's in the same country. You're both in the US, but then. Forgot her name. Sarah is in Berlin. So, like, yeah, you're collaborating across continents. I collaborate with a musician as well, who you'll get to see on Saturday night. Sorry, Friday night. If you come to Manchester, keep advertising this event, okay? But yeah, so you will see it. And her name's Maria Vitek, and we perform as Bad Circulation. And what's really been really interesting is that we're both in the same city. But of course, like, pandemic happened, and so suddenly the collaborations were having to happen online, even though we're like not even 5 miles away from each other. And I guess one thing about live coding that I think about anyway is that it's definitely part of like part of the programming world, so a lot of the tools that we're using, or even a lot of the processes like the online collaborations, there's been tools like that have existed. Like, if anyone's a programmer here, you probably used version control systems like Git and email. So like these ways of working are already embedded, and I think it relates a lot to like what we're doing. So yeah, similarly, like I use Troop, which is like a software for live coding. Just so anyone knows, it's a software for collaborative live coding, which you can use in any time zone, anywhere, and you can collaborate simultaneously. And so yeah, like, and I use that with Maria. And again, like, I guess it's funny, I just saw in your chat as well, you're saying how so many live coders are also percussionists. I'm not a percussionist, but in our band, like, I like I'm drawn towards the percussion element mostly. It's just all those drums, all those beats. Love the beats, and yeah, like, everyone just kind of like takes on some roles. Like, they have certain sounds which they seem to like, and so I think that's what happens with me and Maria. We just really have that. And yeah, and then there's also lots of live coding tools, which some of them you can install on your computer, but some of them work in the browser, so you're not really restrained. Or constrained, like you can use it anywhere and everywhere, and sometimes you can collaborate with other people on that. And yeah, it's not like we're all then suddenly like typing a lot more things. It's not like me and Maria are just like writing thousands of lines of code. We're all just like, we have certain roles, and we're able to just kind of like communicate either in the text or literally tap her or go, oh, play this bit or whatever. Or she taps me and says, oh, play that bit. Oh, and yeah, Jason, that is the right Troop link, just so you have that. There's the link to the software. We're going to be coming up soon to, I guess, like, question and answer time. If there are any questions or answer, like, of course, if anyone's got questions, put them in the chat still and we'll get to them. But yeah, do you want to talk about what the live coding scene is like in our respective places or something like that, or did you have anything in particular you wanted to go with? Shall we do it? I'm getting silent, so yeah, let's do it. Alex, go for it.
Well, I was just going to point to, we do have a question in the
we
Q&A
do. Cool.
bit. It follows on from the genre bit, but did you want to talk about what was your, was it how the scene was locally, or?
Yeah, I guess because I know that, like, we've got representations from like all over the world, and so it's just like, starting up the scene in your local country or like your city. Like, what is it about that? How can you get started? How can people get involved? And maybe if you wanted to say anything about like how you started.
Yeah, sure. So anyone's free to make an Algorave, of course. So it's not protected in any way. If you want some logos, you could just find them online or ask someone for the graphics. And there is like some guidelines to follow, which says some things about sort of avoiding hierarchies and promoting diversity and things like that. But basically, you're free to do it. If you want to, I guess the thing is finding like-minded people and sort of maybe setting up a meetup and a workshop is a good way of doing that. In Sheffield, we have quite regular events, both workshops, or we did before the event happened, the pandemic. But we'll hopefully start those up again, sort of regular meetups where you can try it out, and also a workshop. Usually at the end of a workshop, there's an opportunity to play on a sound system, which is a nice way of getting going. How have things been in these other parts of the world? How has it live coding popped up where you are?
I'm just gonna
go for Melody.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, the New York scene's very active, I would say. And so I owe a lot to like a live coding group that's already been there called like Live Code NYC. And so that was like started off by a few folks like Kate Sicchio, Jason Levine, Tom Murphy, Ramsey, Nassar. And then so then after I started going to those meetup groups, it was like easier to find other people, or rather just more people just started joining. And now it's like this thing where there is like live meetups, and then they have a very active Discord that I never go to because I hate Discord, but it's very active and there's lots of good work there. It's no offense, I just don't like Discord. And there's so many like shows happening. I don't know, I think I'm distracted by I got distracted. What was the question?
How is it where you are basically, and like I guess in the whole terms of like the starting up and activities and that you do.
Oh right, yeah, and it's just I'm so lucky to be in a place where there's just like so many people who are putting in work to organize and like spread the word. Like last 2 weekends there was like an Algorave like once a week, like for a weekend, and I thought that was like really exciting, and they were at different venues and everything and organized by different people, so that's like really exciting to see. And then like people here also tend to be very like travel-y, you know what I mean, or connected. Like some people go between different coasts and then they bring it that way. So I know Dan Gorelick, he's someone who goes between California and NYC. He's like organizing an Algorave in California right now, and so that's really exciting. I would say like a tip or an idea is if you're interested in trying to do more where you are and there aren't a lot of people like doing live coding, I say it's okay to have an Algorave that's not pure live coding if there's like some sort of algorithms. That's also smart from a networking perspective and for spreading the word. So something that I like to do is I like to put live coding just in normal shows, like, and not just a pure Algorave or live coding. And I think that's part of what normalizes it. It makes it less special. In a way, I love Algorave, but I want it to be less special. you know? I'm interested to see when it's obliterated in 50 years and you know, and I think that's interesting.
Cool, thank you. Yeah, for me, live coding. So I'm in Birmingham, so I'm in the same country as Alex, but like I'm about 50 miles away or something, and yeah, I've organized quite a lot of algo raves, but I guess I've been lucky. So I used to be a curator at a gallery, and so I'm already kind of like well connected. I guess in one way there are lots of electronic musicians here in Birmingham. Of course, if you ever look up the history of Birmingham, you'll see that like industrial, heavy metal, and electronic music is really big here, and there's a lot of history here. But in terms of like people wanting to learn this, I guess I've been fortunate like with the gallery I was working for. I said, like, can I put on an event? And they just said, yeah, sure. And so they gave me a chance on that. And, that has definitely at least made some more people like be very public with their like, I'm a live coder now or something. But, but I've also got questions and how do I start one in my own city? And I think what you're saying, Melody, as well, like just normalize it, take it to people. Try and do a live coding set in a quote unquote normal event, and see how people take it there. But yeah, like it's this thing like this, like Alex was saying, there's no like official Algorave company, so it's like if you've got the idea, kind of just you build up interest online and everything and see how it is. But again, so like me and Alex, I think we've got the UK covered. Well, and like there's other people as well up and down the UK who do it. But what's going down in India?
Yeah, so I kind of I hopefully my audio is still working fine. I'm connected off a phone right now, but whatever. So I kind of used Algorave as a way to sneak experimental music in the Indian scene because it was hard. Like 10, 15 years back when we used to put on gigs in Bombay, people used to not turn up as much, but then the novelty of it sort of started people getting in. So I would curate in people who would play normal music and then also throw in some more other sounds. So it's been fun that way, sneaking all of that in. But also the fact that I live in I'm from a small town. Not much happens there. We do have like some technical universities and stuff, but what I've had to do is get to bigger cities. So Bombay is where the first couple of Algoraves that we organized happened. But then I've been able to take him to other places. So the first and only proper Algorave that we did in New Delhi was an all-women Algorave. Kind of proud of that. Actually, one person in the audience is I know played at that event, and she does. She calls herself Computational Mama on Instagram, and she does some. I mean, I take credit for getting her started on putting her out there and putting stuff out there a lot more because she was doing some fun things and like for teaching people algorithmic arts and basically normalizing the whole bit about that computational arts people have to be these nerdy boys sitting in a dark room by themselves, whereas computational mama is a fun person who has a kid. The kid himself is a big dinosaur fan and stuff. So he features in her streams and in her Twitch streams and stuff. And also, like the past year has been not that great for people who run their living with this, but it's been kind of nice to connect with people from everywhere. And we were sort of during the lockdowns, we were doing these sort of sessions on Jitsi, where basically every weekend we would just talk about something or the other, take up a tool and like just teach each other how does it work. So it's less about live coding right now. It's more about just spreading the computational arts a bit more, at least here at the moment. So it's been excellent for doing that. So we've done a few events in the bigger cities. The idea is to now take it to smaller ones wherever.
Awesome. Alex, there was a question, right?
Yeah, there was. From Sandeep Tour, do you think that certain live coding environments lend themselves to making specific genres of music? I think it's definitely true that different live coding environments have their kind of sound. They have a kind of aesthetic to some extent, which you can work with or work against, but I think it is there, even if it's just in the examples. It's kind of has a sound, but I think so much of genres anyway, like the idea, I think live coding kind of moves against the idea of genre to some extent. Like we have Algorave, but all kinds of music will be played at that. I think the idea of a genre is maybe a little bit misunderstood anyway. We think of it as kind of a property of the sound, but really it's more a property of the community, the way people talk about the music. Part of it's to do with the structure and the music of the sound, but I think so much of it is to do with the culture around it. So I guess in a way, a live coding environment is a technical thing, but it is also a culture that sort of grows around it, a culture of practice. So in a way, it is its own genre, but the fact that you can just replace all the sounds with other ones and make something completely different kind of means that it doesn't really mean that a particular language really fits to a particular genre in the way we think about it, if that makes sense. Yeah, this is an interesting question, genre. So yeah, I don't know if anyone else has any thoughts on that question.
Yeah, Alex, you and I, we played that network event, that event in IIT Madras, right? Where we used dhol sounds. So I've actually done this before for another sort of corporate event where, so a dhol is like a percussion instrument, an Indian percussion instrument, with just two sides, the skins on two sides. And it's usually used for bhangra. So I use this at one of these corporate events to make some version of electronic bhangra, techno, dance music sort of thing. So yeah, you can just change the sounds and maybe even connect it to, for example, modular systems. So I mean, make weird farty sounds with it, or make some nice ambient gamelan music with it. It's kind of endless, right?
The question, from a nerdy standpoint, I like bringing up that, or I like talking about affordances in classes after we go through some live coding music. I think it's interesting to think about conceptually, like how there are certain affordances based on your tool. Like we go over tidal cycles versus Sonic Pi as like an example, or just like thinking about that, like, and with these affordances, right, like what is easier to set up versus what is more difficult to do, and comparing and contrasting that. And that's something, yeah, I think that's just something interesting to like think about and also introduce to young people as they're using their tools, like this idea of affordances and comparing what it lets you do. The genre thing, I really like this point about the social aspect, because that's something I haven't thought about too deeply, but I was thinking about as you all were talking. Because like music is art, but it also has like a function or role. You know, it's like about it, you know, whether that's like experiential solely for one person or like a social thing, or in a way, can music never not be social if it's being, you know, you could be talking to yourself or you could be passing it to someone else, even if it's like a recording or private. I think that's really interesting to think about, especially like comparing it back to like code and tools and function. There's like, I think that could be fun to mediate on some more. And also like, you know, with this idea of music as a tool, like, you know, what is its role? Can music have a role? And it does, like you think in media, like music as a supporting role for emotions, or you think about socially, which I think like in worship, you know, music has like a long, Western music in particular has like a long history of being like as a tool for worship and, but also in a way propaganda. I just, but not just for religion, but for nationalism. And so I don't know where I'm going, but it's just interesting that that's where my mind went. And I'm thinking like that could be fun to think about in the future, like, you know, for live coding and like comparing it to those things. And maybe we'll have more of an answer in like with context in like 20 or 40 years. But like, there is so much social aspect embedded in live coding and Algorave culture that, you know, yeah, it feels inevitable to have more concrete ideas about it.
Yeah, it's a nice thought. My computer seems to be gradually crashing, but I guess you can hear me anyway. Because often the way live coding is introduced, it's as something that's of the future, that is something that's like, if there's been loads of Wired articles about how live coding is going to replace all DJs and this kind of thing, which I think is an interesting, I think there's a lot of history in futurism as a way of wiping out the past and replacing it with a purer future, which is obviously a sort of fascist ideology. And so it's nice listening to how you kind of, with the different ways in which people have talked about how live coding helps them feel connected to their environment, and sort of how really we see the future in terms of live coding not being special anymore and just being, and how we talked about how we collaborate with non-live coders and how we trying to find ways of experiencing the world through our practices, live coding and so on. So it's nice to see ways in which we connect live coding with more cultural practice that doesn't try to be tech utopian, but really tries to think about how we can slow down technology and sort of bring it into everyday life in a more kind of human way, I suppose.
Complete agreement. Yeah, the human aspect.
Machines can make mistakes.
Yeah, definitely. Humans are using the computers, we're made them, and they will break in the same way that humans make errors. We're at 3 minutes to 5, or 3 minutes to the hour. So I guess, like, is there anything else anyone wants to say? Couple closing words before we go off? No, okay, that's all right. So I don't put everyone on the spot, just completely there. It's like say something inspiring, and just like to let people go off and think about it. But no, I think Alex, you've been muted. You got something you want to say?
I was just going to point people at the awesome live coding list, which is just a huge list of all the possibilities, all the systems and things you can download that we've talked about, and lots more that we haven't. So if you're looking for links to anything, whether it's community links, like if you are more into Discord than some people, you can find links to Discord, or if there's forums, community forums, there's links to Sonic Pi and Tidal and Troop and all these network things, and Git, not GitHub, what's it called, Jibber, Hydra, all these systems that we're talking about. Estuary, yeah.
Estuary.
Get involved, and yeah, be good to see you at a future Algrave or live coding event. By the way, I totally agree. Algrave isn't just about live coding. Any kind of algorithmic art form or any collaboration with one that involves one is very welcome as far as I'm concerned as well. So yeah, all for that.
Cool, thank you, Alex. And yeah, and if you want to pop your like Instagram or Twitter handles in the chat as well, then people can find us as well. But overall, if you just even like go onto your favorite social media platform and kind of like search for the tag Algorave, you'll find plenty of information. You'll find, like Alex said, the awesome live coding list. You'll find just a plethora of information. You might even find that there's people in your local area or nearby who like are very welcoming and will like show you around, welcome you to the house. So yeah, please do go look at some previous performances and think about how you might want to like what you might want to do, how you might want to get involved. There's nothing stopping you. Maybe your computer might stop you. It can crash. Your computer might crash. But I'm going to sort of wrap up now because we're literally just out of time. It just turned 5 o'clock. So I guess I've sort of taken on the role of a bit of a host. But either way, I'd like to thank everyone, Abinay, Melody, and Alex and myself, I guess, for being part of the conversation today. It's been really fun, and I'm glad that like I've been able to speak with everyone today because, of course, we haven't seen each other in a long time, so it's good to kind of like reconnect. And thanks everyone in the chat. I don't know how many people have watched today. Maybe you'll watch later, but thank you all for your questions, and thanks for listening to us talk. I hope you've learned a bit more about live coding and some different perspectives. So the Corridor of Light Festival is opening tonight. It's the start of it. So if you're in Manchester, go along the Oxford Road. There's going to be lots of projections, lots of events, lots of cool things happening. And at the Hatch, which is the venue which the Algrave will be happening at, you'll be able to see some pre-recorded some pre-recorded Algorave performances, including ones from everyone in this chat basically here today. So please do come along, go there and see that. And then again, if you're in Manchester, the following day, tomorrow, Friday, from 6 till 10, there will be a live in real life Algorave with people and stuff. So you'll be able to see us live coding and our computers crashing in person, and you'll be able to experience it all and everything all. So yeah, please do come along to that. So yeah, and thanks for having this Corridor of Light. I shall do a bit of a wave to the camera. I'll just be waving to everyone as we go along. But yeah, thanks again, and see you all on the internet and in real life soon. All right, take care, everyone. Bye. Just going to wave to the camera a lot. You can unmute and say goodbye if you want as well, but you don't have to. Go on, do it. You have to do it now. I told you.
Bye.
See you.